started with a flicker. Just a faint red light, barely visible unless you were looking for it. I wasn't. At least not at first. But one night, lying in bed with the curtains open, more out of laziness than intention, I noticed it. A glow. A pulse. Coming from the apartment directly across the street. First I thought it was a reflection. Maybe a router or a TV left on, something harmless. But it was always there. Every night. Same spot. Same angle. Always facing my bedroom window. And then I realized. Someone was filming me. The thought made my stomach tighten. But not entirely out of fear. There was something else. Something darker. Warmer. Like my skin had just remembered it existed. I didn't close the curtains. I wish I could say I was frozen. That I didn't know what to do. But the truth is, I left them open. Wide. I started brushing my hair slower. Walking around in just my shirt, letting it ride up just enough. I'd pause at the window to sip water. Nothing dramatic, just long enough to be watched. Long enough to be wanted. And every night, that little red light blinked like a secret we weren't saying out loud. It should have scared me. Maybe it did. But not enough to stop. The first time I let my robe slip a little too far off my shoulder, I swear I felt the air change, like his breath hit the glass from across the street. My chest ached in a way I hadn't felt in years. Not from touch but from being seen. Really seen. Noticed. Wanted. Hungered for. I started performing. Not stripping. Not that. Just movement. Suggestion. The slow stretch of my back as I leaned over. The way I undid my hair at night. The way I pressed my fingers to my lips when no one else was supposed to be watching. But someone was. And I let him. Every night I told myself I'd stop. That this was reckless. That it was crossing a line. But my body never listened. And then this morning someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, he didn't say a word. He just held out a flash drive. And looked me dead in the eyes. Like he already knew everything. I didn't take it at first. I just stared at him, at the small silver thing between his fingers, like it might burn me if I touched it. My heart was loud, too loud, a drum against my ribs. Not panic, not exactly. But a kind of thrill-soaked dread. He was tall. Calm. No smile. No threat in his eyes, but no apology either. Just presence. I think this belongs to you, he said, quiet but steady. I reached out without meaning to. My fingers brushed his and I felt it, that electric pulse, the kind that lights up every part of you you've tried to keep dim. I didn't ask what was on it. I didn't need to. It was me. All of me. He didn't explain. Just turned and walked away, like he had already said too much by showing up. I closed the door and leaned against it, trying to breathe. My palm was still warm from his touch. The flash drive felt heavier than it should have. Like it held more than video. Like it held proof. I thought about not watching it. But of course, I did. I waited until the sun went down, like that would make it feel less real. I turned out all the lights, sat cross-legged on my bed, and plugged it into my laptop. And there I was. Frame after frame. Night after night. Not just the nights I posed, but the ones before, when I didn't know I was being watched. When I was just existing. Reading. Laughing to myself. Dancing badly while brushing my teeth. Crying quietly at 2 a.m. With the window still cracked open. He saw all of it. Not just the fantasy I built for him, but the parts one never meant to show. And the way he filmed, it wasn't crude. It wasn't lurid. It was intimate. Like he was studying me. Like I mattered. I don't know how long I watched. But when the screen finally faded to black, I sat there with my arms wrapped around my knees, trembling. Because I realized something that scared me more than the camera ever did. I liked it. I liked being his secret obsession. And part of me, the part that hadn't felt alive in years, wanted more. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of that footage. Not just what he captured, but how he saw me. Like I was something worth lingering on. Every movement, every breath framed like art. I couldn't stop wondering how long he'd been watching. And why it didn't scare me the way it should. The next night I did something I hadn't done since high school. I dressed up. Not for a date. Not for myself. But for him. A black slip I hadn't worn in years, soft and nearly translucent in the right light. I lit a candle, left the curtains open, and stood by the window. My heart was pounding so loud I thought it might crack the glass. And then there it was. That tiny red glow, steady now. Watching. I didn't move for a while. Just stood there, letting the candlelight kiss my skin. Letting him see the rise and fall of my breath, the curve of my neck as I tilted my head back and closed my eyes. I imagined his hands gripping the camera. His breath shallow. The tension in his chest. The ache between watching and needing. And I gave it to him. Slowly, sensually, like a slow dance with silence. Fingers trailing over my collarbone, lips parted, eyes flicking toward his window every so often. Not directly at him, but just enough to let him know I knew. This wasn't a mistake. This was a game. And I was playing too. I felt powerful and exposed all at once, my body humming with something I couldn't name. A craving that had nothing to do with touch and everything to do with being desired. Worshipped. Consumed from a distance. But it wasn't just about performance anymore. It was about him. Who was he? Why me? What did he see when he looked through that lens? And most of all, what would happen if the distance between us disappeared? The next morning, I opened my curtains without thinking. Habit now. It had become our ritual. This silent electric rhythm we played out across the street. No words. No messages. Just light and gaze and breath held too long. But that morning something was different. His window was open. Just a crack. Just enough. No red light. No camera. Just the possibility of him. Closer than before. I stood there in my robe, coffee warm in my hands, and for the first time I caught his silhouette. Barely. A flicker of movement behind sheer curtains. Tall. Still. Watching. I didn't look away. It was strange, this invisible string between us. No names. No voices. But somehow more intimate than any conversation I'd had in months. That day I couldn't focus. Not on work. Not on my phone. Not on anything except the weight in my chest. This slow-building tension that sat between my ribs like a secret. That night I stood by the window again. Nothing dramatic. Just a white tank top, bare legs, soft light. And I waited. It wasn't the camera that came on. It was him. He stepped into the frame of his window for the first time, backlit by the dim glow of his apartment. No camera in sight. No mask between us. Just him. Shirtless. Quiet. Watching. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Still. Breathless. Connected by nothing but glass and shadow. I pressed my fingertips to the window. Slowly. Like a confession. And he did the same. Across the street, across the silence, his fingers met mine. Not touching, not really. But it felt like more than touch. Felt like surrender. And in that moment I wasn't afraid. I was aching. Because I knew this wasn't about watching anymore. It was about wanting. And sooner or later, one of us was going to cross the line. The next evening I didn't dress up. I didn't light candles or choreograph my movements like some slow, silent performance. I just existed. Hair messy. Skin bare. A long t-shirt and nothing underneath. I didn't think about how I looked. I didn't try to be anything. I just let myself be. And he still came to the window. This time without hesitation. No camera. No curtain. Just him, completely visible now, like he wanted me to see him the way he had seen me for so long. His expression was unreadable, but his stillness spoke volumes. He wasn't filming anymore. He was waiting. I stood there, hands trembling at my sides, the tension between us pulling tight like a wire stretched too far. And then I did something I'd never done before. I waved. Barely. Just the softest flick of my fingers. An invitation. A challenge. A question I couldn't bring myself to speak out loud. His response was slow. Intentional. He nodded. That's all. But it was enough. I backed away from the window, heart pounding, and sat on the edge of my bed. For minutes, maybe longer, I just sat there, holding my breath like the air might break around me. Then a knock at the door. I didn't even have to look through the peephole. I already knew. When I opened it, he was there. Not on the other side of the street, not behind a camera, not framed by distance, but real. Right there. Taller than I'd imagined. Eyes darker, closer. Hungrier than any lens could ever show. We didn't say anything. Not at first. But I could feel it. The silence thick with everything we hadn't said. Everything we'd done without speaking. His eyes dropped for just a second, to my bare thighs, to the hem of my shirt, to the flesh I could feel crawling up my neck, and when he looked back up I wasn't breathing. "I shouldn't have filmed you," he said, voice low and rough. My heart twisted. I should have slammed the door. Should have yelled. But instead, "I know," I whispered, and I stepped back just enough for him to walk in. He stepped inside like he was crossing a line drawn in smoke, slow, unsure, but certain enough not to turn back. I closed the door behind him, and suddenly the air felt too thick, like my apartment had shrunk to just this room. Just us. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. Neither did he. He just stood there watching me, not like he had from his window, not through a lens, but real. His eyes on mine. Steady. Quiet. Searching. It wasn't lust in his expression. It was something deeper. Need. Curiosity. Regret, maybe. A strange sort of reverence, like he was afraid I might disappear if he blinked. "I thought about stopping," he said softly. "Every night. But you kept the curtains open." My throat tightened. "I know." He took a step closer. And then another. There was barely a breath of space between us now. I could smell him, clean, warm. Something faintly familiar and disarming. My skin tingled before he even touched me. But he didn't. Not yet. Instead, he raised his hand like he was reaching for something fragile, and gently brushed a strand of hair from my face. That was all it took. My breath hitched. My body leaned before I could think. And then somehow I was in his arms. Not crushed, not claimed, just held. Like he needed to feel if I was real too. His hands were careful, warm, unsure. Mine clutched at his shirt like I might fall without him. My cheek pressed to his chest, listening to the quick, uneven rhythm of his heartbeat. I didn't realize I was trembling until he whispered, "Are you okay?" I nodded. But the truth was I didn't know. Because everything inside me was unraveling. Every wall I'd built, every lonely night, every whispered fantasy. They were all breaking into pieces against the steady beat of his heart. He pulled back just enough to look at me. Our eyes locked. The air between us was full of questions. But neither of us spoke. And then, without a sound, his lips brushed mine. Not a kiss. Just the beginning of one. That almost kiss lingered longer than it should have. Like both of us were waiting for the other to flinch. To stop it. To say this was a mistake. But neither of us moved. We just breathed into that impossible closeness, our lips hovering, barely touching. And in that pause I felt it all. His hesitation. His guilt. His hunger. And mine. When his mouth finally met mine, it wasn't urgent. It wasn't a storm. It was quiet. A kind of quiet that only comes after too much noise in your own head. Too many nights of wondering, aching, pretending you didn't care. His lips were warm. Careful. Like he was tasting a memory he wasn't sure he was allowed to keep. My hand slid up his chest, over the shape of someone I'd only seen in shadows. He kissed like he'd been waiting, but not just for permission. For meaning. It wasn't just physical. It was confessional. My body responded before my mind did. I pressed into him, feeling the tension melt, then spike, then melt again. His fingers found the small of my back like a magnet, gentle, trembling, as if even that touch was a risk he had to earn. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Every breath was a sentence. Every brush of skin was a story. I felt his hand trace the curve of my waist, the softest graze of his thumb slipping under the hem of my shirt. My breath caught, not because I didn't want it, but because I did. Too much. His forehead rested against mine. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. And I should have. I should have thought about the footage. The flash drive. The fear. The power he had over me. But I didn't feel powerless. Not anymore. I looked up at him, eyes glassy, heart wide open. "I don't want you to stop," I said. And just like that, the kiss deepened, not wilder but truer. Like we weren't just touching lips, but rewriting the way we saw each other. There was no more glass between us. No more distance. Just skin, breath, and everything we'd both tried to keep hidden. And the way he held me, it felt like I'd already lived this moment in my dreams. I just hadn't known his name. We ended up on the floor. Not in some frantic tangle, but slowly, like gravity wanted us closer. Like our bodies couldn't bear to be separated by anything, not even breath. The candle on the table had burned low, casting flickers across the walls like shadows trying to tell the truth. We didn't rush. Every touch was deliberate, like we were learning a language with no words, one brush of skin at a time. His hands explored with reverence, not entitlement, like he was trying to memorize the texture of me, the softness, the pulse. I felt everything, every nerve alive, every inch of me waking up after years of silence. There were no scripts, no perfect lines, just glances, gasps, fingers lacing, heartbeats sinking. And somewhere in the middle of it all I started crying. Not sobbing, not broken, just silent tears sliding down my cheek without permission. Because I realized it wasn't about being watched. It was about being seen, understood, unraveled, held in a way that didn't ask me to perform. He didn't pull away. He just cupped my face and kissed the corner of my eye like it was holy, and whispered, "I see you." That was the moment everything shifted. The desire was still there, strong, aching, but it wasn't the center anymore. What bloomed between us wasn't lust. It was something stranger, more dangerous, tenderness. After we lay on the floor, bodies tangled, silence thick with whatever this now was. I should have asked his name. I should have asked 100 things. But I didn't. I just rested my head on his chest, listening to the soft rhythm beneath my ear. Eventually, he reached for his jacket on the chair, slid something from the pocket. Another flash drive. He set it beside me, quietly. "This one's different," he said. "It's everything I never sent." He kissed me once more, softer than the rest. And then he left. I didn't chase him. I just lay there, staring at that small piece of metal. I haven't opened it yet, but I will. Because sometimes the most intimate thing someone can give you isn't their body. It's the way they saw yours when you didn't even know you were worth looking at.